Hello and welcome to the Universities Australia Marketing, Communications and Development Awards, honouring excellence in the everyday work of university marketing and communications colleagues. I'm Peter Lloyd, Director of Strategic Communications at Universities Australia. 2020 will be remembered as the year coronavirus disrupted the entire world. University teams have had to adapt, pivot and be agile like never before to meet the challenge. Today is a celebration of your incredible response, with winners in 6 categories across marketing, communications and fundraising. We're presenting this online event in Canberra on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal people. We acknowledge and respect the continuing culture and contribution they make to the life of this city and region. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and pay our respects to the elders of the respective lands from which you've all joined us today. Now, being an award show rather than a full conference program means UA has had to do some adapting of our own. For this compact format, we've decided to forego traditions. Instead of a keynote speaking address, we'll bring you an informal, in-conversation special appearance by Stan Grant. He'll be talking to Universities Australia's Chief Executive, Catriona Jackson.
Education makes us better. There is no doubt that being exposed to a world of ideas has lifted my own life. Being exposed to other people has changed my own life. I've reflected on my own views. I've changed my own views. I challenge myself. It gives you the capacity to live with an inquiring mind in a volatile, contradictory and, an ever-changing world. So education makes us better.
That's coming up, but first let's get the announcements underway. Here's Catriona.
Thanks, Peter. 2020 has been a testing year for all Australians and an incredibly demanding one for universities, especially our marketing, communications and development colleagues. Many of you on the East Coast who are hard at work from the get-go responding to the Black Summer fires. They seem like a lifetime ago. Just when we were all drawing breath, along came the first global pandemic in a century. On behalf of all the staff here at the peak body Universities Australia, I want to say congratulations and thank you so much for such hard work in such a demanding year. But now it's time to show our appreciation. This year's awards are in 6 categories. They are Best Marketing Campaign, Smaller Budget; Best Marketing Campaign, Larger Budget; Best Proactive Communications; Best Real-Time Response Communications; Best Fundraising or Engagement Campaign, Small Team; Best Fundraising or Engagement Campaign, Large Team. And now to our first award. The 2020 prize for Best Large Budget Marketing Campaign goes to Charles Sturt University for the It's What We Do campaign. The It's What We Do campaign set out to bring the new Charles Sturt University brand to life by making it a first-choice tertiary institution. The judges said the campaign was a success based on demonstrated student insight and a clear target market. The judges noted the It's What We Do campaign provides a focal point around which the university is rethinking and reshaping programs and experiences.
We're really elated to win. This obviously means a lot to our team and to our extended team, our agency BW and Dentsu, who have supported us. And obviously, the fact that this is not just a marketing award, coming from the sector and coming from higher education from our peers, this really means a lot to us.
Because it's not what we say that makes a difference. It's what we do.
It really stands out. So, we talk about a sea of sameness in marketing and higher education. And obviously the use of hands, so hands-on, it's what we do, really stands out. And it talks very authentically to Charles Sturt University and the practical nature of the education that we deliver to our students.
Congratulations to the CSU team. Now to the second category, the 2020 prize for the Best Small Budget Marketing Campaign. The winner is Queensland University of Technology's subset, QUTX. QUTX is a relatively new provider of professional and tailored executive education. The idea of the campaign was to position QUTX as a leader in the space of professional and executive customised education for the B2B market in Queensland and Canberra, targeting government, corporates and not-for-profits. The judges commended the use of a simple but effective channel to reach the target audience, including out-of-home advertising at airports, as well as office towers and simple creative messaging. The key campaign achievement was the recruitment of $2.2 million in new major client business.
Oh, this is amazing. It's been a huge campaign to manage. A lot of people involved and a really rewarding one for QTX this year. So we are absolutely thrilled. Lots of layers to this campaign as well. So it was really about launching QTX into the market as a provider of executive education. So there was a general brand awareness piece, but then we had a lot of sort of more account-based marketing layers embedded without. So a really complex matrix of activity that we think we've executed really, really effectively. It's a bit of a slow burn campaign. We don't expect to see a huge impact on revenue immediately. I think it'll take a good 6 months to 2 years to really see the wins of this campaign. But it's been in market now for 8 months and we're already seeing an impact. So that's really exciting.
Congratulations to both CSU and QUT. In a moment, 2020's Best in Communications and Development. But first, one of Australia's most respected and awarded journalists. A Wiradjuri man, Stan Grant has 30 years' experience in radio and television news and current affairs here and abroad. He's a maker of documentaries and writer of several best-selling books. In recent years, Stan's confronted Australia with searching questions about national identity in tandem with his very own personal journey into his Indigenous identity. He's in conversation with Catriona Jackson.
Stan Grant, thank you enormously for joining us for the Universities Australia Marketing, Communications and Development Conference. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Tell us about your journey to university. It wasn't linear and it wasn't assured, was it?
No, it certainly wasn't. It was completely accidental. It should never have happened. I should not be sitting here even talking to you today, to be honest. I mean, I had really very, very little education. Classically, you know, when I was growing up, it was very sporadic. We were incredibly poor and itinerant. I didn't have a permanent home until I was about 15 or 16. So we moved from town to town. Mum and Dad were constantly sort of on the road looking for work. It was either that or stay on the mission. And, you know, life on the mission was pretty harsh. So we were sort of on the fringes of society. We would live in sawmill shacks, sometimes camp by the side of the road. We'd move from one town to the next. And I started about 12 or 13 different schools before I was even into high school. And I went to 5 different high schools. So, you know, 17, 18 schools by the time I'd finished school. So there was no continuity. There were huge gaps in my education. But I had a different sort of education, I suppose. You know, I read a lot. I was always a really voracious reader, and I sort of taught myself a lot of things, and I probably prefer that form of education, learning, at least for me. And I got into university purely because I graduated high school despite the obstacles, and I was working as a mailboy at the Institute of Aboriginal Studies in Canberra, where my uncle was the janitor. He got me a job there, and that was the extent of my ambition until Marcia Langton, who most of you would know and is now professor at Melbourne University, was studying for her PhD at the time, I think, and she was working there as a research officer. And she pulled me aside and took me into the library and slapped me up the head, really, and said, what are you doing with yourself? And, you know, you need to do something more with your life, and what do you want to do? And sort of inspired me to do that, and, you know, filled out the forms and helped me get into university.
I think Marcia is both an incredibly respected figure in Australia, but also, I mean, frankly, I'm personally afraid of her. I assume if Marcia tells you to do something, Stan, you just do it.
If you think she's scary now, she was pretty ferocious back then, I can tell you. Look, she was one of the people who was an example to me, because no one in my family had ever been to university. It wasn't anything that was on my agenda. It was we had no experience with that. I didn't know any Aboriginal people who were at university, and suddenly to see someone like Marcia and to see others who were doing it. And then when I went to University of New South Wales, there were a handful of people there at the time, only about maybe 10 or 11 of us. And so we stuck pretty close together. really interesting bunch, actually. Pat O'Shane, I think, was finishing some postgrad work at the time. Lorraine Little, who's a lawyer now, was there. Helen Corbett, who has gone on to do great things in her own life, and Warren Mundine was there. And so we were a pretty sort of tight-knit bunch, and that got us through. But it was a very, very foreign environment for me. Really incredibly racist, to be honest with you.
It must have been pretty tough. I mean, one of the things that I know universities work really hard on is not just trying to have Indigenous kids understand they can come to university, but helping them to stay in when they get there, because it's just can be a constant struggle.
It was a totally foreign place for me. My first introduction to it was orientation week, and I moved into one of the colleges on campus, one of the residential colleges, and they had a party there. And the first thing I see is a group of dickheads walking in with mock land rights T-shirts, blackened faces, and with sticky tape to flatten their noses. And, that's my introduction to the place. It didn't get much better, to be honest. I would sort of hide myself away in the room. And, I had never socialised to any great degree with non-Indigenous people. I had friends at high school who were not Aboriginal, but I played sport and I did those things, but it was always at an arm's length. I never lived alongside them. I'd never eaten at a table with white people, so I didn't know how they even went about things. And for the first few months, I was too sort of afraid really to go into the dining hall. I used to wait until everyone had gone, and I'd sneak out and go get something to eat on my own, or we'd stick together with the other Aboriginal kids. So it was a very, very foreign environment, and really understandable why a lot of people just don't stick it out.
Absolutely. Look, when you think back on it, what do you think that university experience gave you? I mean, apart from, making you an incredibly tough, resolute person just to stick it, but I mean, what did it do to your brain going to uni? Well,
it's introduced me to a lot of ideas. Certainly did that, and encouraged me to think. I probably got more out of meeting other Aboriginal people who were on a similar journey to me. I think probably the biggest thing that came out of university, the thing that probably stuck with me the most, and the thing that I go back to the most and read the most, would be a really deep love of philosophy. I think that was the thing that sort of set my mind alight, was the history of ideas and dealing with the complexity of ideas, asking those questions of what it is to live in the world, what is a good life, what does an identity mean?
In 2015, you delivered an extraordinarily influential speech about racism destroying the Australian dream. I'm wondering what shifted in you to allow you to give that speech, to stop being a journalist observer and to lay yourself open.
Yeah, like much of my life, it was pretty accidental. That's always been there. That I think at a very young age, I probably I was very aware of the world around me, and I was very aware of the history that had put us where we were, and resentful and angry about that. There is no doubt about that. When you see your family humiliated, as often we felt that way, and to live with that sort of crushing poverty and that uncertainty, and to know that that's not any of our doing, that's where Australia had put us. I carried a great deal of anger about that within myself. And living outside of Australia as well probably allowed me to look back at my country with a very clear eye, reporting the conflicts of the world, living in China for a decade, seeing in Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan and other places, society grappling with the same sort of things that we went through, the imposition of foreign powers, imperialism, colonialism, war. And then when I came back to Australia to see the booing of Adam Goodes, which was at its height when I arrived back, and to see a complacency in Australia still about our own history, when I was asked to give that speech, which was part of a debate exploring whether racism was destroying the Australian dream, well, it was very obvious to me that racism sat at the heart of the Australian dream. There is no Australia without racism, without the idea that this country could be taken from another people just because you believe they were inferior to you. And we live with the consequences of that. So when I was asked to do that, it was a very natural thing for me to stand there and to reflect on my place in this country, my place in this country's history, where we are heading, but where we have been. And I think that was informed by all of the experiences that I had working outside the country. I was also at an age, I think, where I was very secure in myself, and my own accomplishments as a journalist meant that I was very secure in my own standing. Because if you put your head up, you know, people are going to come after you. You need to be very sure of who you are and where you stand. And I was very confident about that, and so able to sort of bring that to that moment and to speak what was just very fundamental truth, something I'd lived with and known all my life. And I thought at that moment, Australia needed to have that put in front of them, front and centre.
Look, if people haven't seen the speech or read the speech, I really would refer them to it. Just finally, Stan, the people we're talking to today are marketing and communications professionals from universities in part, or actually in the main. It's their job to tell the story of why someone should come to university, of a sort of opportunity, of a sort of change that it might evoke. They're, like the rest of the country, having a pretty rough time at the moment. We're all dealing with coronavirus in the best way we possibly can. If there was a message that you wanted to send to them about how they do their job, what would it be, Stan Grant?
Well, that education makes us better. There is no doubt that being exposed to a world of ideas has lifted my own life. You know, being exposed to other people has changed my own life. I've reflected on my own views. I've changed my own views. I challenge myself. It gives you the capacity to live with an inquiring mind in a volatile and contradictory and, you know, an ever-changing world. So education makes us better and it makes us free, because it frees our minds. And I think you should never lose sight of that.
Stan Grant, it's been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Stan Grant there with Catriona Jackson. You're watching the Universities Australia Marketing, Communications and Development Awards. This special presentation is in lieu of the full UAMCD conference program, but rest assured we'll be back with a full conference next year in October. The host city is Brisbane. Hope to see you there. Now, with more of the awards, here's Catriona again.
Thanks, Peter. It's now my pleasure to reveal the winner in the category Best Proactive Communications. For 2020, the prize goes to the University of New South Wales for their campaign to promote packaging made from banana plants. This winning entry impressed the judges with the team's approach of taking a quirky news story, turning banana plantation waste into sustainable packaging, into a compelling communication strategy that both promoted the university's reputation for innovation and attracted new leads for investment and funding from industry. The campaign was a standout for its clear business case and the successful leveraging of national and international interest to deliver tangible value for the university.
I'm really stoked about winning this one. I always thought this story was a bit of a hidden gem. I'm very happy for our academics, Associate Professor Jayashri Arcot from the Faculty of Engineering and Scientia Professor Martina Stenzel from the Faculty of Science. And I'm also really happy for my little media team, the STEM media team, as this is the second consecutive year that we've won this award for University of New South Wales. So as I said, I'm very stoked. This one about making packaging from banana stems really stood out as a solutions-oriented piece, which is a big focus of our communications team. So wherever possible, we showcase innovations that, and projects that don't just outline the scale of the problem, but the solution to the problem. So in this case, the wasted banana plants which die after each fruiting season, which I never knew about before I did the story. And then there's also the environmental problem of plastic bag and foam packaging waste that affects all of us in our daily lives. So this means that it really aligned with one of UNSW's key focuses, which is finding solutions to sustainability challenges. This is a great example of a story that had tangible impacts beyond just the basic media metrics. As stories go, it was a pretty good performer. Like, it was in our top 2% of web traffic on the UNSW newsroom website, and it was covered by about 60 media pieces, including newspaper, radio interviews, online, and in the trade publishing world. And apparently had a reach of about 2.8 million people, according to our media monitors.
Congratulations to the team at UNSW. Now to the second communications category, the 2020 prize for the best real-time response communications. The winner is the QUT Emergency Student Fund Appeal. QUT's Emergency Student Fund Appeal showed that often the best real-time communications can be simple, straightforward and effective when you really know your target audience. Confronted with unprecedented demand for financial assistance from students, it was conceived and launched in just 5 days as the first nationwide lockdown was announced. The appeal raised more than double the target amount and was able to provide emergency support for 338 students. It delivered tangible results and, most importantly, QUT followed up by thanking its donors and supporters.
I'm absolutely delighted that we've won. I'm thrilled that we've been able to showcase a great example of how the universities come together in a time of crisis to help our students. We submitted it because we thought it was a great example of how we were able to work together, but also respond really quickly, which traditionally universities sometimes struggle with. We were able to launch this appeal in 5 days from concept to delivery. And we were able to do that by working together as a team, but also identifying a scholarship equity program that could be scaled up to address an increasingly number of financially distressed students. My first day in the role at QUT was on the Monday. So this literally day one was my day one. And I was tasked on that day with getting this appeal out in my first week.
Congratulations to UNSW and QUT for their outstanding work. Before we continue, I have some diary dates for next year. On the 10th of March, the Chair of Universities Australia and Vice-Chancellor of the University of Queensland, Professor Deborah Terry, will deliver the annual National Press Club Address in Canberra. That will be a standalone event. The main Universities Australia Conference is being held later in the year on the 2nd and 3rd of June at the National Convention Centre in Canberra. And of course, the UAMCD Conference will be back as an in-person event in Brisbane in October. Now, to complete the award ceremony, let's go back to Catriona one last time.
Thanks, Peter. COVID-19 has been the story of the year, and it's a subject tackled by the winner of the 2020 award for Best Large Team Fundraising or Engagement Campaign. And the winner is the University of Queensland's COVID-19 Vaccine Acceleration Project. The judges considered UQ was the standout entry. Back in February, UQ embarked on a bold plan to accelerate development and manufacturing of a vaccine for COVID-19. The university received $16.5 million from government and donors if UQ secured a further $6.5 million. An appeal was launched using a $100 gift from local school kids as a catalyst, and the outcome exceeded the target, raising over $10 million from 2,600 individuals, foundations and corporations in less than 3 months. The judges noted how UQ overcame a critical funding gap with time-sensitive, cautiously optimistic, factual and purposeful communication.
It was a group of about a group of Year 5 students that really kicked this off and made it all seem a bit possible. So we're excited not only for our team and here internally at UQ, but really excited to acknowledge this with all of our partners externally, including those Year 5 students. They're an outstanding group of girls who asked our vaccine team through a letter a very simple question, which was, would $100 make a difference to your efforts? And of course, the team said, absolutely. And even with a smiley face on the bottom of the response, and the girls were hooked since then. So they rallied and did fundraising to meet their goal. And alongside that, they helped us see some potential in really mobilizing the broader community to help meet some pretty urgent goals. So they gave us a vote of confidence in going out to the community, and they also gave our researchers a whole lot of confidence to keep going. In fact, there's a wall of drawings and other things on the wall that have come in from kids all around the world that is in their lab. I'd say that they were a big part of us reaching 2,600 donors in the end, who joined and followed their lead. Everything from coin jar donations from children in Melbourne and Hong Kong to major corporations and foundations who step forward to support the project. So I'd say I'd credit them with raising about $11 million or so. Nobody could have anticipated what this year would have been. So it certainly wasn't our plan to do vaccine fundraising this year. The simple truth is that this came to be because there was a need, there was an urgent need to do a rapid acceleration of a really promising vaccine candidate from some team members here at UQ who are just extraordinary. And we knew the government was going to step forward, but we also knew we would have a little bit of a gap. And it was just right time, right place, and the right inspiration.
Now to the final award, 2020's Best Small Team Fundraising or Engagement Campaign. The winner is Western Sydney's Giving Day. An inaugural event, the Giving Day campaign involved digital, email, telephone and social media marketing channels to raise almost $770,000 from over 820 donations. These support scholarships, research and other programs at Western Sydney. The winning entry impressed the judges with a range of projects including Campaign Highlight, the Chancellor's Challenge Abseil, where high-profile members of the university community and friends abseiled from level 9 of the university's Peter Shergold building in the heart of the Parramatta CBD. The campaign exceeded its target by 53%. The judges liked the way that Giving Day tapped into and positioned the university in the Western Sydney community.
We won. I can't believe it. It's just this. I'm feeling a lot of feelings. It's wonderful. It's just this great sense of pride, sense of achievement. It means so much to the people here at Western. We've come so far, and just so proud to be part of this team that's worked on this campaign.
You have the power to make a real difference and be part of Western Sydney University's first Giving Day.
We submitted this project because it was just so successful for us. I mean, we set out, trying to make Western, look like a great place to give, raise our donor profile, leverage the culture of philanthropy that we've been building over the past few years into this unifying, campaign. And we thought it was really special. I mean, getting the Chancellor to agree to an abseil and all that, I mean, it was just terribly exciting. We wanted to share it with everyone, and that it was a new model of fundraising, especially in the university sector.
Congratulations to Western Sydney and all the 2020 UAMCD Award winners. That's just about all we have for now. Our special thanks to guest Stan Grant and to the colleagues who sent applications. Keep up the good work. From me and all the team at UA, bye for now. The last word goes to this year's winners.
Normally you come to work at 9, you leave at 5 and you don't really know much about your colleagues. Suddenly we knew so much more about people. From seeing the kitchens in the background to the Zoom calls to seeing kids and pets run through. It really, I think, gave a much more human element to our work.
The way I've kept positive and resilient in this year is just realising how lucky I am that my job easily translated to working from home.
So we were able to help students with grocery vouchers and financial aid, and I think that's what really got us through, this coming together of the university to support our students.
We've also made a lot of time for social catch-ups, and they can be things from trivia quizzes right through to celebrating people's birthdays, but really getting the team together and talking about the year and particularly the separation.
Finding the opportunity in the challenges that have been thrown our way. For me personally, that's, how I've come through this year. Being able to find the positive in every situation, which isn't always easy, but there is always a positive.
Working towards something that could actually make a year like 2020 not happen again. So the hope of the vaccine is a very big inspiration. And of course, the people that we surround ourselves with working towards a cause and showing what people can do when we work together, we get a big lift from that.